Welcome to the Boardroom Sessions podcast. In these sessions, we meet the most amazing and interesting people. We learn about their passions, their business models, cool new technologies, and of course, their lessons on personal growth. I hope you enjoy. In this Boardroom Sessions podcast, we meet Pernille Spire Lopez. Pernille is the former CEO of North America for IKEA. She was also head of global HR for IKEA and wrote a very cool book called Design Your Life, which I'm a huge fan of. We dive deep into the details of Design Your Life, lots of lessons learned from her life in corporate America, and lots of lessons on how you can find your own personal mission statement. She is now currently with a couple of large nonprofits as chairman of the board. That would be Homeboy Industries and Save the Children International, where she's both the on the board but chairman of the board, and a couple of corporations, for-profit corporations, Echo Shoes and Meyer Corporation, which have 200 plus big box stores in the Midwest, very large companies in which she gives them their expertise. We discuss some details of all kinds of fun stuff here. This is a fascinating one, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you think. Enjoy. Pernille, welcome to the Boardroom Sessions podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad to have you. I'm a big fan. I read your book. I'm thankful to Dave Rhodes for making the introduction here to us. Dave Rhodes, by the way, was podcast number 1 on the Boardroom Sessions podcast here. And so if anybody wants to make that connection and take a look at Dave, go right ahead here. But appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. Let me go down the list. So the resume reads, you are the CEO of IKEA North America. You are the head of HR globally for all of IKEA, right? And you are sitting on the board right now of 4 different boards. You're chairman of the board of Homeboy Industries. You're chairman of the board of Save the Children. And you're on the board of ECO, the shoe company, ECCO, and of the Meyer Corporation, which is a big box grocery-focused retailer in the Midwest with 20 plus locations that competes with Walmart and Target and Sam's Club and people, right?
Yeah, 200 some, yeah.
200 some.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so you've also been an author of a very cool book called Design Your Life. And that's what inspired me to reach out and see if we could have this podcast here today. And I can't wait to share with the folks that haven't read the book some of the things here today. So thank you for the time here. The most interesting thing, I think, or at least the draw in on the book here for me and for the readers is your journey, right? And I want you to describe to us a little bit about your journey here. So you moved from Denmark, right? From a small town, thought you were going to be a journalist, but had some aspirations to be a startup company with a friend. And you made the trek to the United States with no support system, no base. You came out here and you faced some adversity. Want to tell us about that?
Yeah. So, I was an adventurous, I would say, child and grew up always being curious and adventurous. And when journalism didn't quite work out, I'm like, what am I going to do? And I'd always been fascinated by home furnishings. I kind of grew up, Denmark is a very focused on home furnishing, great design. So when journalism didn't work out, I'm like, I got to do something. And I wanted to live in America. I wanted to, for sure, live abroad. Love Denmark, but at the same time, it's 5 million people that are kind of all very similar. So I wanted to come to America. And my brother was living in Fort Lauderdale and was helping me actually figure out what I could do, set up a business where I would import Danish design, because that's also a way that you could actually get your visa to come to the United States. And then I had a friend that would be the exporter of Danish design. So at the age of 23, I got on, I left my family and everybody. And really all I had was my brother and a distant cousin that lived also in Fort Lauderdale and ended up being a great support. And I say that I left Denmark with a few things. a container of a random assortment of Danish design on the water in a container. I came with, I would say, some great values in my backpack. And I just came with a lot of confidence and enthusiasm and energy to sort of explore the world and my new life.
What would you say those values were? And were you cognizant that you had those values, or there's something that over time came out to remind you that this is who I am?
I think a lot of it actually was just this sense of humbleness, that I knew that in Denmark, I mean, people work hard, and I think a understanding that humility, work hard, I believe social justice is something that I've always had and has kind of carried with me my whole life, and still very important to me. Have respect for others and be curious, and realizing that I was a small person in a big, huge country, and that humility I think was. But I also grew up with, and I think that probably is just a fun little thing. But I grew up loving Pippi Longstocking, and her saying was that I haven't done this before. I'm sure I'll be good at it, and that was sort of for me like I'm sure I can do that, and I think that has followed me as well. Because
it was a battle cry. You talk about your moment at the play,
yes,
where at showtime, where you just felt it was time. You had done all your homework and you were ready to go for the play. And everyone around you was starting to get nervous, jitters at the very moment that the show's about to start, and you buck up and it's showtime, and you talk about that moment. And so I didn't know the Pippi Longstockings portion, but that's the same thing. It's talking about being optimistic and ready to go.
Yeah, and I think that is something that that was probably an important moment, and I think. Maybe not so much Danish values as actually understanding myself, because that was always a question. When do you know you're a leader? And I think that was the moment when I go back and say, I actually understood there what leadership was about. And you have to be anchored sort of in yourself and know, okay, here's what I know I've done and what I stand for and what I can do. And then just kind of get out of your, sort of get off the edge and jump and just have some confidence. And that has carried me really throughout my life. I would say most of the jobs I've ever had, I have not been prepared for. But then at the same time, I have been prepared, just in a different way.
Right. But you had the optimism to get you there.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely. And I would also say what I also left with, and I say that to many people, I am in true gratitude for my father, because when I grew up, I think from the day I was born, he saw something in me. And I think that has absolutely been a gift, that he saw that, I could do whatever I wanted. And so he always supported me in, yes. And in a lot of ways, I think I was doing all the things that he probably had wished that he could do. But that confidence that you get as a child of that, yes, you can do it. And it wasn't just given like by, without any sort of expectations and stuff, but he just I had that connection with him. And I've always really believed that was part of it as well.
Great. So when you came to America and this startup venture, it didn't go so well. Ultimately, right? And so tell us, you had to go and get what we refer to as a job, a good old job, right? At some point, when you realize that the original dream, the original catalyst for coming out here may not be working out, but I needed to do something to fund my existence. So you ended up getting a job at the door store.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so it was related. It was in the merchandise and furniture business, right? And you got your early chops there. You got your early, you met a mentor there, right? That told you some things. You learned some lessons there. You moved on to Store, which was an IKEA ripoff, right? Mm-hmm. They were trying to copy IKEA. You got some additional knowledge there. And eventually they bought IKEA, but you had already been made a shift to IKEA, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so tell us about that. What was your first role when you went to IKEA?
So my first role at IKEA was I was sales manager, and what that was, we were opening up. IKEA was opening up on the West Coast. It had been a long kind of time before they opened up, and now was the time. They had had some success, and they. So my job was to be sales manager for all the non-furniture. So if you've been to an IKEA store, it's all the product that is downstairs.
Downstairs.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so my job, I was the sales manager, and we didn't even have a store at the time. So that was interesting, and so we opened our first store in Burbank, and I did, I think, quite well. Started hiring staff. But very quickly did I realize that my dream was to become a store manager.
Right.
So when I got to IKEA, it was after all these different, my business on my own, going to the door store, going to the company that copied IKEA. When I came to IKEA, it was like I felt like I was at home. It was a perfect combination of, Scandinavian values, home furnishings, and being in America. So it was a great start, and that was my first job.
And the store manager has a lot of freedom. You have a lot of opportunity to be creative and in your own way. So that was the goal, was to become the store manager. You had your first opportunity, like a lot of folks do, on a turnaround job, right? So Pittsburgh was the store, is that right? So Pittsburgh had a few managers before that didn't succeed, and business was down, and their thought was, let's give it to the new gal and see if she can pull it off.
I guess that was it. I remember I was offered, when I finally got a store, that I was so excited, then I forgot to ask where. And I got two options. It was Pittsburgh or Houston. I went home to my husband, and he was like, oh boy. And we lived in California at the time. So, it's not most people get up and say, let's move from Los Angeles to Pittsburgh. But yes, so I came to Pittsburgh. And the other thing I didn't realize was this was the worst IKEA store in the world ever. And I was the third store manager. And when I got there, there was no support. And the staff knew that I was there to either turn it around or close it. And of course, they looked at me. I was there. I had two little kids. My son was 5 months at the time. My daughter was 2. My husband was a teacher in LA. But when we moved there, he, of course, had to get certified for becoming a teacher there. So, he really literally didn't have a job. And they looked at me knowing that I had never been a store manager before, and thought to themselves, and exactly how is she going to turn this around? So they were pretty tough on me. And, but I thought, I was kind of, still very enthusiastic, and knew that I knew enough about the business that I probably could pull that off. But I think the main thing that I found out getting there was actually that, and I think the biggest learning I had there was that there was no support from the office in Philadelphia, which was our North American headquarters. There was no money for marketing. There was nothing. And people sort of had no interest in coming to visit. So I was literally on my own. And then I realized maybe I wasn't alone. And I looked around, the staff was really who were depending on me. And I realized maybe they have all the answers, and they actually did. And I learned that the customers, the community, and the co-workers, as we called them, were really all I needed. And if I had respect and humbleness for that, they would help me turn it around. And those are also the things we had not done well. When we came to Pittsburgh, we came in as Sweden invades Pittsburgh, which was right after they had lost all their business to Japan, and Pittsburgh went through. So that was not the smartest thing, and it wasn't humble. And I think this model of really listening to people, and bringing them in, because often they actually have the best ideas.
Mm-hmm. That's a very humble approach. And so the story goes, you turned the store around. And so where did that lead you?
Well, that when I was turning the store around, as I mentioned, a lot of it was around the employees, and I was very vocal about how did we lose sight of the importance of involvement by employees, and we had this very clear culture, and it seemed like we'd sort of abandoned that a little bit. And so I was very vocal about the people issues. And my boss at the time, that was president of IKEA North America, one day just called me in and he just said to me, we haven't had an HR manager for a very long time. And why don't you seem to have all the answers. And he was sort of being, a little sarcastic about it. And I said, what do you mean? And he says, no, I'm serious. I think this would be actually a great opportunity for you. I think you have the business, you have the passion, and why don't you do that? And that was really exciting because I really saw that people, you don't do any business without people. Mm-hmm. And a motivated, engaged staff is the key to success. Mm-hmm. And you might be successful short term without that piece, but I don't believe long term you will. And so, I went back to my husband, who now is on his career. The kids are enjoying Pittsburgh. We're sort of settled as a family. And I come home and said, after 4 years, I'm like, honey, do you want to move to Philadelphia? I got offered this job. And he just looked at me and like, are you kidding me? And was not at all supportive of that. And then I went back to my boss and I was like, I kind of want to do it. I don't know really what to do. And I just said to him, flat out, I will do it, but I have to do it from Pittsburgh. And it was one of those where you just say what you want. And then he said, yeah, I don't see that's going to be a problem. So I was really one of the first people, I think, that were telecommuting and commuting and going back and forth weekly between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia.
And that role was head of HR for North America?
That's right. And did that for 4 years with a very, I think, clear mandate of creating a strong HR agenda, very much around employee benefits, work-life balance, more women coming into store manager positions.
And there was some barriers there that you hinted around in the book, but did a good job of avoiding. And I think that I will expand on that for a little bit. So do you feel, as a mother, right, going through as a store manager yourself, that there were some barriers there? Were they natural barriers? Were they company barriers? Or was it culture and American business that make it not advantageous for a working mother?
I think what I realized was that it was a little bit of everything. No, it's ourselves as women, and what I just said about we don't always go out there and say, here's what I need and what I want. Okay. We're sort of like hoping that somebody will figure it out and read our minds. So one, it's about speaking up and saying, here's what I need and what I want. And secondly, I also think it's about having people like my boss, when I said to him, yeah, I'll do it, but this is how I got to do it. He realized that could work, so he was very supportive. And of course, there's other jobs where it wouldn't work, but this particular job was, I really believe that my experience, I saw people in the store that was struggling because the people that they worked for were sort of seeing, like if you as a mom, suddenly you get a phone call that your daughter needs to be picked up at school, the store manager would be irritated. And then I heard him say that I wish she would be more committed. And I just went back when I had the opportunity myself to be store manager, to go back to that woman and say, you can go and take care of your daughter whenever you need to. So don't worry about it. And we'll figure out how you can make up time, or, you're a manager, that you're people that you can rely on. Do not feel bad about that. And so I think I realized that my role was to help women see that they need to speak up, and also that IKEA needs to embrace that store manager jobs is actually a good job for women, because I felt I could be home sometime during the week. When my husband wasn't home, I could take them to school. I could spend the morning. Then I worked evenings sometimes. And when I was working on Saturday and Sundays, he was home with the kids. So it was about realizing that a store manager job could absolutely be done and women would thrive in it. But they had to step up.
Mm-hmm.
The company had to embrace what it would take. And that, it would be small things that we just have to think differently about. So
that's very important, right? To kind of assess and address those things. And I'm certain it was those opinions that you had that got you where you were at the time. And so that ultimately led to a CEO role.
Yeah. So in the 4 years that I was doing this job, it was interesting because I actually became responsible for leading a global HR strategy, and which was really fun and exciting. And it sort of went on with what we just talked about, unleash the potential of all people and provide support for what that means.
So then you were head of HR for North America, then you were promoted to head of HR for the company.
No, at that point I was just running a strategy.
Oh, a strategy.
Yeah, so it's kind of like an assignment, it was like a project I was doing on top of.
Which you do when you want the next role, right? You volunteer for those strategic
He
projects.
He asked me, he said, could you do it? And I thought, yeah, that's kind of interesting and exciting. And so, and I think that is a good learning, is that if you want to be seen, sometimes you just got to take on some, and not just to be promoted, because I didn't really think about being promoted. I felt like I could do this job for like many years.
Mm-hmm.
So I did it more because I wanted to be part of the change, and I worked with a lot of amazing people. And my job was really to facilitate this with amazing people from around the world. And that was something where the new CEO for all of IKEA had asked me to do that with support of my boss, who was the president of North America. And then I got access to present to the top management at IKEA, and the CEO at the time then saw me, and that was a great exposure, and that further led to that when my boss was leaving to go back to Sweden, his time was up in North America. That then Anders was his name, said, I want Pernille to take that job, and that was pretty surprising. That was not your typical
career path
to
right. Right. You had no HR experience. You became head of HR of North America, right?
Yeah.
And then you had no C-suite experience prior to that, and then they offer you the CEO of North America role.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And so tell us about that. That's a big role. I mean, everyone here on this podcast has been in IKEA, I assume, right? Multiple times. Mm-hmm. We've all had the family ritual of putting together IKEA furniture. So we know the product, right? This is one of those places where people can actually relate. Mm-hmm. You were setting strategy for the U.S. operations and running that company. How did that feel? Did you feel overwhelmed at first, or were you right at home, comfortable in that scenario? And how was that?
Well, I think first of all, I was totally surprised. No, I mean, that was not what I had in mind. And actually, I thought I had taken this HR way too far. So when I was called in to, my boss wanted to see me, I actually thought, oh, I'm sure he's going to fire me. And then I left being promoted. So
you mean because you had such strong opinions about the HR strategy?
I just speak about women, about really diversity throughout the company. It was really run by mostly Swedish males. And I mean, so I was very, here's what, and we need more benefits. We need higher pay for. So I was a little bit.
You thought you pushed it too far. You actually pushed yourself right into the CEO role.
Exactly. So you never know. But what was interesting about it is that, so definitely didn't expect that. And I will have to say that the most important thing was actually my boss's support. And I think that was key for 9 years, because he was very, very clear with me. And I knew that what we needed to do. It wasn't like I needed to go and come up with, a whole new completely. I mean,
expectations were there. You knew what the roadmap looked like.
We needed to build stores, and we needed to get our property department and expansion department up. We needed to, really get employees to be ready to take on. Everybody had to get ready for the biggest expansion IKEA had ever done in one market. And, going from 23 stores in North America, some of them very old, not up to sort of our standard and our concept. I had to relocate some stores. And then within 9 years, there needed to be 50 stores in North America. And these are big stores, and you got to buy land ahead of time. You got to so that was
to be in a growing market, right? Isn't it better to have a booming market with new homes and new condos and things moving? Because then people are buying more furniture. They have to take into consideration all those demographics.
Absolutely, and I think the challenge was still that IKEA was seen as a very small niche player in especially in the US. They were actually further along in Canada, and so it was about building the brand, and we believed at IKEA at the time that the best way to build your brand is build stores, and that was the task. So I would say that it was just massive what we had to do, but I also learned that the most important thing is to accept that you are not the expert, and that you need to bring the best people around you, and then together you can get it done. And then of course also the trust by the board and the trust by my boss, that was the global CEO, and just not think that I needed to reinvent anything. I mean, IKEA is a concept company. It works. And you just got to maximize and optimize as much as you can. And I make it sound like it was easy. It was very, very hard. No, but I also believe, not from a technical perspective as much, but from a personal perspective, I was more prepared than ever for the pressure, the things coming at you every day, to make sure you keep a certain distance because you're being criticized and there's pressure every day, and have a good team around and have that trust. So in a lot of ways, I was more prepared than I had ever been, and every failure, everything that I had experienced up to that point had actually prepared me.
Awesome. And so that was a very successful run too. That period of time that you were there, I looked at the numbers and the growth, and congratulations. That was an epic role there. And as well as then you led to the global chief of HR, right?
Yeah.
And then I'll fast forward to a portion in the book here. You had a life-changing event, right? While you were at IKEA, you had an event. Why don't you tell us a little bit in your own words what happened for you there, and then subsequently how that's changed you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when I was HR manager in North America, I think you heard me talk about my husband, how he was saying, yeah, I don't think that's a good idea that we moved to Philadelphia. And he was, so I took on this job of being HR remote. Our kids were young. He was just getting his career started. And so I just kept on adding more and more and more to my plate, and had everything running at all cylinders at all times, without any kind of, lowering my expectation of pursuing perfection in every one of these areas. Mm-hmm. So yes, I wanted to be the perfect, employee, leader, mom, wife, friend, have we had friends over every weekend. It didn't matter if I traveled, and I was the perfect host. And I was just like ridiculous. I just kept on going, and, people looked at me and like, how does she do it? And I thought, oh, wow, I am just so good at this. And it was like a pride, that I could just take on more and more. And then one time I was in Philadelphia, and I actually had a big day of presenting our diversity strategy. And I just met all of this like hesitance and, devil's advocates and negativity. And there was not really anybody that said, yes, let's go.
So there's diversity there.
And so all day long, I had this numbness in my arm. And when I came out, my mentor, who you have heard or have seen in the book as really, and still plays a big role in my life, he happened to be in the car when we were driving back to the hotel. And of course, I'm the one driving. And when we get in the car, I say to him, I just don't understand. I have this numbness in my arm. And just jokingly said, maybe I hope I'm not getting a stroke or something. And he didn't think that was funny. And as we were driving, the fact that I had said it to him, I think just opened up to that things were really kind of like gonna not go the right way. We're driving on the way to our hotel, and on the way, there's only one exit. And as I was like passing out, I literally were considering continuing. And I was by my losing, sort of I thought I was losing my consciousness, and blacking out was the only reason I got off. And within like a few minutes, I'm in an ambulance driving through Philadelphia with, red lights. And I was just laying there, and all I could see were my feet and this red blinking light, thinking, oh, so this is success. And really a incredible moment that I always have that picture. Get to the hospital, get everything done. And on the way, the woman that was the paramedic said, I just want to let you know, you are not having a heart attack. And and I get all the testing done. And then out comes the doctor, and he just looks at me and he says, this is what stress does over a very long time. So he was definitely clear on it was not something that had happened the last 24 hours.
Yeah.
No, this was not an event.
This was a long time of not taking care of yourself.
Adding on and just not breathing. Yeah, right. Terrible. Right. And so, but of course, I was so far in the boiling water that I was so happy that I wasn't going to die, that we got back in the car, went back to the hotel, and I called my husband, and I just said to him, I just want to let you know, honey, that I had a little bit of an incident, but I'm fine. He's there with the kids, don't really pay attention to it. And the reason I told him was not because I wanted that I really wanted to discuss it. I was just worried that there would be a bill coming from the ambulance that he would see and wonder why I was in an ambulance. Yeah. So that tells you something. So I went back and continued my life. Thought, this is perfect. I didn't die, so yeah, I'm good. And I think that is really the biggest learning, that it took 6 months, and it took me to sit in a development program we have had with IKEA, where I was in Sweden, and we're there for a week, and it's all about personal development. And that's what IKEA does. They invest in people's development, and
probably a large part of their success, especially up in the management, right?
Absolutely. People stay there for a long time. And not everybody, we all have to make those decisions ourselves, but it was in that week. And I just remember every day we would have to do different things and talk about different things. And I was so anxious. I was like, this woman is looking at me all the time, and I don't know what she wants me to say. And it was the third day, and of course, everybody's sharing all kinds of stuff. And I was just like, no, I think I'm just perfectly fine. And it was the third day, and I remember her leaning, sort of looking at me and saying, why do you always lean in and sort of focus on others? What happens when you sit back and just take care of you? And that I realized that was really the moment where I realized that I had become I did everything on autopilot, and I had become emotional numb. And the little thing that sort of opened up my numbness was the thought of that my son it's just like the most, Sebastian, that name, he touches me in so many ways. And he had said, I was reading to him before I left, and it was some story where the mouse died. And at the end, he looked at me and he says, Mom, why didn't you cry when the mouse died? And I said, what mouse? And I think that's an example of how easy it is to just go too far. And I feel very fortunate that this happened, but it was actually that moment that because I would have just continue being proud of pushing and, doing the heroic thing.
Right. Our society values that
exactly.
Hard pressure, that constant go, the grind, right?
Yeah.
We talked about it before, the grind and the hustle.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think to realize that I have seen so many people, and I see them still today, and I know that, just like myself, people said, oh, why don't you take a break? I'm like, I don't need a break. I would be so and now I know that when I talk to people and I ask them why they, maybe they need to slow down, or they have to figure that out on their own because we're just totally immune to it. I think we're deaf.
Sure.
Sure.
And we're proud and we think we can push through, right? And we also think it's the admirable, courageous thing to do is to continue to push through, right?
Yeah.
And so that's incredible. You had that opportunity and that self-reflection and even the facilitation to bring it out in you and your personal development that, hey, there's something here. I'm really not okay from a personal values and personal journey perspective. This isn't an alignment right now. And so you wrote a book recently, right? And I want to shift in gears here and talk a little bit about this because I'm a huge fan. Design Your Life is the name of the book. And in the book, you give a toolkit for everyone, right? First, a couple observations on the book from my perspective, and I'm not a book critic. I'm just Mike.
You're a reader.
But I thought that the story was awesome, and you just shared the story with us here in a condensed version. I loved the optimism in your book, and I love the optimism in you. And it shows even in you talk about it with adoration, even when you were young, right? About how things can happen. And you talk about there not being glass ceilings and things like that there really is only your own ceiling, right? That you put on yourself. You talk about taking charge of your life. That's most people wouldn't write that in a book because there's a lot of people that don't want to hear it. I believe people would rather have it, I've had things happen to me and don't you understand that this is the situation that I'm in and I'm so unique. But your advice here in the book isn't that, hey, here's a process and here's 7 steps to getting well. It's here's a bunch of tools that have worked for me and go through these exercises and use them at your will. And I've done these things in other facets and some of them were new, but they're refreshing. And I challenge folks to take a look at it. The thing that I thought was most important, and I want to make sure everyone gets an opportunity to hear from you, is about your personal mission statement, right? And so at the expense of maybe embarrassing you, I'm going to read your personal mission statement as you wrote it. And you do make the comment here that it is a work in progress, so it may have changed a bit or a word or two, but I want everyone to hear here your mission statement. And it is, when I am grounded in who I am, empowered by my unlimited potential, and take leadership for creating the life I want to live, I will give energy and power to others. Together, we will impact the people and the world around us. That's awesome. First of all, congrats on having one. I could ask 50 people, and I would bet you in the high 40s, people don't have a written mission statement, right? A business would die without a mission statement, yet we as people go around every day without one, right? Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that mission statement and a mission statement in general.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I worked for IKEA my whole, I feel like my whole life. And I think what got me up in the morning every day was the mission that IKEA is on. It wasn't a company. It was a social mission of creating a better everyday life for the many people, and then by creating furniture and all that. But it was like this
cost effective, easy to transport, easy to
but
build
still
at
quality
home,
and
quality.
Working for the, to bring down prices so more people could afford, and everybody deserves a home that you can, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, everybody deserves a home where you can bring you a sanctuary. And so I was inspired by that every day. And I have been very fortunate working in a company that values your own personal, development and getting in touch with who you are. And I learned a lot about my values at IKEA, and we were focusing on value-based leadership. And what inspired me about the mission for myself was reading the book, The Alchemist, where he talks about that our most important job while we're here on earth is to have a personal legend,
right,
and know why we're here. And I just think once you get that, no one can take that away. And I think you're right. Often, and of course, I work with Save the Children. I mean, I see some of the most marginalized families and children around the world. I've seen it in America. I work with Homeboy Industries, where they are probably the most tragic lives that I've. But even there is such an optimism when people actually find their mission, and they have fire in hope. They are fired up by hope, and that gives them, and that is what I believe we all have. We just need to ignite it. We got to find it, and it's just amazing when we see it. And I know this is a very long mission statement, but it really is. When I feel strong and know who I am, then I can impact people around me.
Sure.
So when I'm like this, not knowing really who I am, and I'm just, confused, I don't really think I'm the best, and I'm certainly not the person that should be telling other people what to do. So this mission statement, I think, is really what, just like a company, gets you up in the morning.
Yes.
And
it's my why.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Eric Thomas says, my why wakes me up. Right.
That's
and
right.
He gets fired up, and I listen to a lot of those kind of motivational talks in the morning. They are my audio coffee, I call it. Mm-hmm. And yes, that they all have a mission statement. All the greats have a personal mission statement. And so for those of you who haven't read the book, get the book, because Pernille, you go through details about how to find it, right? So this is unique. Lots of people will tell you to have a statement or to have a why or things like that, but they don't go through the details of helping you find your why. You go through and lay out toolkits here of how to go and find that. And that's refreshing. And so I'm going to save that for folks to go buy the book and get after it. And then, send me a note with your personal mission statement. I look forward to comparing notes with you. There were some things in the book, first of all, that I really thought were amazing. One, you make reference to my two favorite books in the whole wide world, The Alchemist and The Four Agreements. I hand out the Four Agreements. I believe that those are four of the most important things to think about on a daily basis. I find that the more I focus on my own words and being impeccable with my word, that I find other people's limiting beliefs come out of their mouth all the time, right? And so I've heard you recommend that, and I got chills the moment the question was asked on a podcast I was listening to yours. What's your favorite book do you recommend? And you said The Four Agreements. I'm like, I have to meet her. And so I couldn't wait for this to tell you that. So
thank you.
Super, super great books. Another thing that I picked out of the book that I thought would be important for the group here is you talk about networks, building your network, right, of people and mingling. You even give advice on how to work a room and how to mingle and how to give networking. So I run a networking group called the OCTP with a buddy of mine named Devin Hornick. And we work hard at building this community of people. And it changed. The audience and the goal, the mission of our group actually changed. Devin and myself both meet with CIOs for work, and those are typically our clients. And so we figured, hey, we're two guys that are doing different things and meet the same clients. So maybe we can fill a room full of these CIOs, and they'll attract more CIOs, and we'll all of a sudden have all this business. And that's how we started. What we quickly found out was over 6-8 months of having these meetings every month, that we had a great following, but we didn't necessarily have CIOs. We had other people in technology. We had other leaders around the business, project managers, leaders in different divisions. And we found that there was a good number of them, 30 to 40% of them, that were in transition, that needed a new network, that didn't have people to help them find a new role, a new job. And so Devin and I used our network to help these individuals one at a time. After these meetings, we'd go have coffee, we'd go have lunch, and we'd meet with these folks and we'd decide that, hey, maybe I can help this individual with some introductions. Maybe we can do some things for you, give you some career advice, maybe give you some interviewing skills advice, things of that nature that we might be able to give and be of service. And what we found was when these people landed in their new role, they called us in. And so we immediately had an ally and a friend and a new account that we didn't have. So the business came, but we gave first with no idea what was on the other end of that. And now in retrospect, it's the gold in the meeting. It's the gold in the group. It's the ability for us to give and care and serve without a thought. And in return, our group is amazing. And so I thought about that when I read your book. You give actual skills on how to network. And so what are your thoughts there? You have a big network, obviously, with what you do. And so that's a key piece to business, is it not?
I absolutely think so. I think, again, I think it has to be personal too. I mean, I can certainly talk about how I have created networks through my life. And I think it really is about meeting people and seeing them and not just immediately want something out of it, and actually connecting. I think that's the main thing, and have, be sincere about, wanting to meet somebody, because then, you will not forget it. And it's so interesting because in my life now, I'm just able to connect dots. Now I am able to provide a company with a person that I know is looking for a job. And I just think that it's about growing that network for yourself, getting input on how to do it, but you got to do it where it feels right for you. And then if you're a company, I think actually today, I think it is very, very important to create network that are not just about switching business cards. I think people are tired of that.
Yeah.
It really is about meeting people, because in a lot of ways, we're much more isolated today than we've ever been. So I think everybody has a need to meet people, and not just to figure out how I can do my next thing and how can I use you to get a job. That's sort of the old school of follow me, I'll show you who you should meet, and then, and then you try to figure that out.
Right.
But it's not yours. Right. And I think today it's figuring out how to create a network that works for you, where you can give and also where you can take away. And I think everybody has to sort of redefine that. And there's all kinds of ways you can do it. And I can certainly give my ideas, but
we're doing it right now. We're giving the ideas right now.
Absolutely.
And we did not have this conversation prior, and we're in lockstep here. That's exactly what I believe. And it's so evident when people are trying the old school tactics on the new school platforms, right? So LinkedIn, an old school networking tactic of people reaching out with nothing there, wanting to connect, and then soliciting right after that is so apparent, like that's not connecting, right? So a simpler, kinder way is to actually care about that individual and what they're looking to accomplish, right? And we do it in this networking group of mine. That's just one example, but I knew that's where you would go with this if we had a chance to talk about it. And so that's refreshing, and that's another tip here to think about. What I'd like to do is ask you about the business of the book. If I could, right? So I read a lot of books, and I wonder, if there's Book and Mike at some point. And Dave and I have talked about a program, and another buddy of mine, Jeff, and I have talked about some coaching things that we have done that could easily be put into a scenario. But neither of us have made the jump to make I think the podcast was a big leap for me, actually, to try and do something different. But tell us about the experience of a book, and tell us about the business model, how you go about getting an agent, a publicist. What does that all look like?
So first of all, I would say that most people will say, don't expect to make a lot of money writing a book. I'm sure Michelle Obama is talking different numbers, and, Brene Brown, and we all aspire to that, but I think that's sort of a little bit of an illusion. And so I think writing a book is really I would say, first of all, it's an incredible personal experience. And secondly, it's a lot of work. And it's also about putting yourself out there, and it's kind of scary.
I just listened to Laura Logan, the CBS, 60 Minutes anchor, and she has not written a book yet because of that exact experience. She says, I'm authentic, and I want to put everything that I am who I am. And if I put everything on a piece of paper, it's too much for the public to handle, right? that she's going to offend somebody, or that people will be put off, or that she'll limit her career or something like, and she's just afraid to put it all out. Right. But she had a very real podcast interview where she kind of laid it all out, and she said, it's just different. I can have a conversation with somebody I appreciate. So I get that.
Yeah. Because when it's in writing,
right? You're putting your life and your experience, and you're being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right?
And you want to be, tell it the way it is, but also you don't want to hurt somebody. And so it is, I think, a fine. But it was very interesting how it came about, because it was when I was still at IKEA. There was a woman that ran the oldest publishing company in Denmark that wanted to write a story. She wanted a book about a woman that had actually left Denmark, because Danish people are sort of leery of anybody. Why would you ever leave Denmark? And certainly becoming successful is a little unheard of. So she wanted me to use my voice and sort of my story to inspire women in Denmark that she felt, and I can see that you measure your life based on your beautifully designed kitchen.
Okay.
So you put everything into that. You have a vision. You have you spend all your money. You spend a lot of time, expertise, help. Like, you really know how to do this. So they have an amazing kitchen, but they don't know what to do about their own life.
Right.
And are often passive aggressive about life sort of has gone by and they don't have any input. So my message was, no, it is your life. You can design it like if it was your kitchen.
Right.
And if you would do that, can be more important than having the perfect kitchen. And so the book was launched in Denmark, and I would say, quite successful. And then a friend of mine through a network is a publisher, and she said, if you ever want, I would love to publish your book. And the
name didn't translate very well in English, right?
I thought it was a beautiful
cookbook, or is it a design book, right?
Well, even in Denmark, I think that was actually, we could have done better, because you really you had to explain that what I just said. It is brilliant if your life was a kitchen, right, but it doesn't really sell.
Right.
So when the opportunity of publishing it here, I think it just became very obvious that designing your life was really a perfect sort of take on my life. So I think what I wanted to say, so I had a publisher that actually came that came to me. Mm-hmm. And also I kept on saying, I don't want to do it, because I was, even if I was a journalist, I didn't think I was a good writer. And I think that is holding people back too. Mm-hmm. And I was very fortunate. And I think for anybody that wants to write a book, get a ghostwriter, because what you do is exactly what we're doing here. You tell your story.
And then somebody helps put it to paper.
Then they literally have somebody type it all out, and then you start editing and so forth. I mean, that's how. And so I was fortunate enough to get to a woman that was 10 years younger than me, a Danish woman, a journalist living in London, and we become very good friends. And she sort of, could just take my advice as she was 10 years younger, and got a lot of help. So what is it? So about a book, I think the reason that I really wanted to have the book done in here in the United States was I thought it can be guiding me in what I want to do next. No? Right. And so I am passionate, and I've always been passionate about coaching and mentoring other people to be, take charge of their life.
Yeah.
And so the book is sort of a platform for that. And
interesting. Because most people have an idea that, hey, I've got something here I'm going to throw out and maybe I can make some money on it. Your thought was, I've got some great ideas. I don't know where it's going to take me, right? But I'm going to open the door to this new chapter. And you talk about opening doors and chapters in your life and the book. And I think that's awesome. So you go to the book, you write this book with the publisher. So then what? Do you go on Barnes & Noble book tours? Do you go on book signings? Do you get a website up around the book? Do you start the business that you started with your daughter at that same time as the book is out? A life well design, or a good life design?
So there's a lot of things that you have to consider. So I went into a agreement with the publisher in the U.S. Beyond Words, which is a great publisher out of Oregon. And we did what was called a partnership book. Because if you don't have a partnership book, there's just, you are literally going to go out and you're going to spend all the money yourself, and you're going to go, and all that matters is that you're going to have book signing, you're going to get on shows, you're going to do all of those things. And remember, I left IKEA to completely not do anything for a year. And I wrote the book, which was actually quite fun because it was a reflection of my life so far. Mm-hmm. And I kind of saw it that way. But the last thing I wanted to do, and I thought I would make the biggest mistake in my life if I now made the book back to running around like a mad woman.
Oh, right. Using all that energy and
so instead of actually taking learning from where I've been, I would just get back on the treadmill and do the same thing over again. Now it's just called running a book tour and go and speak and all that. Right. So it was very deliberate that I said, the book is here to stay. I didn't do this book to be, out there being, getting all these big book tours or, and not that I probably would have, I don't know how that would have gone, but I just felt like it will work itself out. And so, so the book has been as successful as the energy I put into it. And I am happy with that. I don't go back and say I should have done this instead. Not at all. And so I feel like it has been a book that just keeps on selling, and I just feel it's, it still is important to me, and I give it to people, and it still has validity and is still pretty current. So that's, and then they have been actually good. They've sold the right to, it was published in China last year. I did a couple of book
on the desk
speeches.
Here, I'm looking at the book in various languages. I'm seeing the Arabic version, the Chinese version, the English version, and the Denmark version.
Yeah. So it's so I think anyway, it is what it is, and I'm like I'm saying, it is exactly the way I wanted it. And so it's been a really positive experience. But I think I really encourage people to think about writing a book, mm-hmm. and do it from a standpoint of that is a really incredible process.
And so for a business model guy like myself, I'm always thinking, what's the angle here? Where could you take this, right? Mm-hmm. And so you have so many tools here. Mm-hmm. And such a process of finding your own personal mission statement and all the advice here that goes mm-hmm. along with it. There's a program in it, right? Mm-hmm. There's a program, a process. There could be workshops, there could be follow-up books and all that kind of stuff. So you end up starting a business with your daughter called A Good Life Designed.
Yeah.
Is that part of the natural progression of the thought process?
Yeah, no, exactly. So that was actually out of the book came, of course, you got to have a website. So I created a website, and but what actually ended up happening after I had taken the year off, I actually realized that what I love to do is the book was for me to provide to the everyday person that doesn't work for IKEA, provide tools that you don't get if you don't work for top companies and have executive jobs. You're sort of having everyday people that both parents work and they're, trying to make it work. They are often the ones that need some of these tools. And I feel if I can provide those tools where they don't have to pay a lot of money and just they're out there, and I've always made it needs to be accessible for the many people. Mm-hmm. So if I can, and so we have created a website. I have an online program, and actually what I figured out that there is actually a process that you can go through. And once you have gone through the process, then when you're done, it's kind of almost like yoga, where you actually you can mix it based on where you are in your life at any time. So I always feel like it's a place to come home to. It's a place where you always can return. No matter what happens in your life, you can go back and pick up these things because you've done the work. So it's, and that's what I feel is is, that's what I want to do. I want to give people what they need. So it's not like you're just doing it for, a couple of weeks and then you're done. It's just something you have.
Sure.
And working on your, sort of feeling in charge of your life and living your life consciously is hard work. People that get to that place of feeling in control and can really manage almost anything that comes at them without losing themselves and put things in perspective and all of that, that takes work, and see things for what they are.
But the rewards are a fulfilling life.
That's right. That's right.
And a life that's in alignment with who you really are, with your true authentic self.
That's right.
And so many people wonder why they're not happy, and they're not in alignment with who they really are. They're doing things for various other reasons. Maybe they think that's what they're supposed to do. Maybe they got into a situation that kind of dictated that. You had an opportunity to walk and make a right turn in the middle of your life, at a very successful point in your life, and find yourself. That's just amazing to me.
No, absolutely. But I think it's a little bit, I think you have to decide also that it's up to you, and you have to find that. You have to figure out that that's for you. Yeah. And I think also what is important is that we got to ask ourselves some hard questions. And I think what I have helped and what I provide is tools that actually helps you answer those questions, because we have this mapping, design for change. And in the book, it's called The 4 Rooms of Change. Mm-hmm. But that's just a way for you to get out of denial and appreciate the things in your life that works, appreciate the things that are kind of confusing, but also take a real hard look at what does not work. And I think those are some of the tough things for people to grasp. And it's easier to just kind of like leave it and then continue. But I think then you have the risk of living a life in sort of numbness or in misalignment or not understanding why you're not really feeling good and jumping up in the morning and say, I'm jumping up for the why, because you don't know what the why is.
Right. That's so important. And I challenge everyone to take a look and do some self-inspection and find out where they're at there. So have you done speaking engagements? Have companies asked you to come and talk to them about this?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've done quite a lot of speaking engagement the last 3 or 4 years. Yeah. And on the East Coast, I was actually just in the company, I asked to speak for women's groups specifically, and talk about the book in companies. And
have you ever done anything for women in technology? It's called WITI. WITI.
No.
There's a group here in Orange County that focuses on empowering women in the workplace. I might have to make an introduction.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. I see all of that. I see the programs. I see, I see how that would be relevant and helpful to people. And so very exciting for me there in that business model. The other business model I wanted to talk about, and probably not a business model thought in why you do it. It goes back to your personal mission statement, I'm sure. But you sit as the chairman of the board of 2 very important nonprofits, Homeboy Industries and Save the Children, right? Tell us a little bit about, before you dive into what those charities do, right? What those nonprofits do. Tell us a little bit about how you get a board seat and what do you do for that board? Because it sounds busy work as well. It sounds like you're right back into the fire in those scenarios.
Yeah, so be careful to follow your passion sometimes, because it becomes, So, and if you have a tendency like me to, of course I can do that. So I've been with Save the Children for about 14 years. So I was with Save the Children before, when I was at IKEA, when I was president, and have always been, IKEA was a big supporter of Save the Children. And I've always really been passionate about the work they do and what we do, because it literally is about giving everyone the right start in life. No, I think we all know that success is very much tied into where you're born. And when you look in the world, I mean, there are just so many marginalized children that will never catch up. And it's just always been, I talked to you about social justice, and I grew up in a place where no one was left behind. Mm-hmm. And so no matter where I go, I have that in I look through that lens. I look through a lens of who is not if it's all white people, I'm like, but we're missing people in a boardroom, or if we're all, one gender, or if we're all, but I also look at, the lens of the people that are left behind, or who are the ones that actually, we need to look out for and change systems and so forth. So I've always been, and Save the Children is an organization that is just fascinating. It's a global organization, and we do incredible work with incredible people. And I got on this board more as, in the beginning, I thought it was because I was, working with IKEA, but the chair told me that recruited me, no, I want you there because of your voice and so I've been on that board for a number of years, and then I was asked to be on the international board. So I have both US and international. And so I got on the board of the international and was there for 6 years. This is my 7th year. And that's hard work. I mean, that is a lot of work, but also very, meeting people and perspective from all over the world, and very humbling and just incredible. And then we had our board chair had to step down in February last year. And then I was vice chair. And so I've been chair ever since, and will continue until I've said I don't want to be permanent chair, because I was very tempted, but then I realized I would just literally be back in what I've always said I was not going to do. So, but how do you get on? I mean, people always, and then the other, so I think board work is, you have to have the credentials.
Mm-hmm.
And
you have to have the experience.
You have to have the experience. So I meet people that say, and of course, being on a corporate board that pays very well, and for meetings, 4 or 5 times a year, and some committee work, and some, people look at it and go, oh my God, I want one of those. Yeah, but it takes a lot to get there. Mm-hmm. I just think that's because,
and if you're not bringing something to the table, and you'll be found out real quick.
Yeah,
right?
and it's really not that it's not. I think, yes, it is not it's not like a full-time job, but the challenges that you face in boards, the oversight, there's a lot to be on a board, and I think
do a bunch of work in between, right? So you're not just what you meet, but you have to make informed decisions.
Yeah, and I think it depends on what board you're on. So a nonprofit board relies a lot on board members being very active. Mm-hmm. A corporate board is more, you come, and unless you're the chair of a committee, or you come prepared, right, and you're really active in the board meetings, and you prepare yourself in a good way. But it's about being present at the meetings and add value there. But still, over time, there's a lot of people that are qualified for, I would say, relatively few seats.
Sure.
So it's kind of get on first class. No, I mean, there's not a lot of seats, but so
there's not a lot of people willing to pay for the seat at the same time, right?
No, and also, there's a long list of people wanting to upgrade and
for free, right? Yeah, upgrade.
Well, I think there's a lot of people that are really qualified to be on boards, and so I think so when you were asking, so what does it take and so forth? First of all, I think it's great work. It is incredible experience. I have learned so much of being on both the for-profit and nonprofit, and I have such respect for governance. And I think what women bring to a board, which I would say in all organizations have predominantly men, women bring just a new tone and a new sort of culture, because now there are new players, and maybe what was a certain way of doing things and getting along with each other or whatever, now it's like, okay, maybe we need to rethink how we do things. So it's a little bit of a disruption.
Mm-hmm.
And I think women are, what am I here to do? They are very clear, at least the ones I've seen, that, okay, let's roll up our sleeves. What are we here to do? What are we being paid for? And so I think there is a shift in just bringing more voices and competences into boards that are making a difference. So I think you got to bring your skills. But I would also say here, a lot of the jobs that I have gotten is again through connections. And I'm not talking about calling somebody or so the way I got into Homeboy. So Save the Children was asked because the board chair,
IKEA, right?
and the board chair had seen me and we had met, and he thought I could add good value.
Right.
And when I left IKEA, I said, "It's okay, you throw me out now." And he says, "No, I told you I wanted it.
It's
for
your
you."
values that they wanted, right?
Yeah. So that was important.
Status.
Yes. And then Homeboy, I knew of Homeboy because we used Homegirl Cafe for my daughter's graduation. That when she graduated in 2014. And we were still living in Chicago. And I was like, wow, that is just an incredible idea. I really like this. This is, I mean, just the whole idea of giving people, a second chance, the whole healing of trauma that you've experienced. There's so much to that. Anyway, I come here and I think that maybe down the road, I want to do something more locally. And a colleague from Save the Children, he and I were working together on a corporate council. He was the chief giving officer for Tom's. He says to me, "I'm going to go on a visit to Homeboy. Do you want to come?" Because he lived in Santa Monica and I was here and I was new.
Tom's the shoe company.
Yeah. And he said, "Do you want to come?" And I'm like, "Homeboy, yes, exactly what I wanted to do." So I go to Homeboy, I get the tour, and I meet this woman that is dealing with the corporate. And she says, "Would you mind mentor me in just creating corporate relationship?" And I said, "Of course, that's exactly what I can do." And so we spent time together and I'm helping her. And without me knowing, I never asked for it or whatever, she puts my name on to Father Greg to be on the board.
Wow.
And so there's also something about, again, this like step up, step in for the right reasons.
Right.
If you're doing it always to getting better position or like for ego
it gets
issues.
Found out and it's transparent and it's not effective. And more importantly, you're not bringing the right value. And if you're pushing your agenda there, if you're going there from a serving heart, right, which you were there to help and bring what skills you had to the table to see if you could help them. In turn, you worked your way into a very important role for them, which they're benefiting from having you on their board, right? And so now you're chairman of the board of Homeboy. So, and
it's a very, I didn't really realize that there's people want to be on this board. Now we're looking for, we're always.
It's a brand. It's a big brand. I was at LAX. Homeboy has a retail establishment inside LAX now.
Absolutely. And
most people know, but why don't you give us a quick overview? What's going on at Homeboy today?
Yeah. What's going on is really exciting. We are growing, I think, every year. It's about a $20 million operation out of a very small space in downtown LA. And I would say that we are, Homeboy today is the world's largest gang intervention program. And I would say the most successful. Right. They just have done it for 35 years. And it's a very simple model, which is that traumatized former gang members, they literally have never been loved in their life. And what they need the most is a place where they're trusted and feel that there is that there's hope for them. And so they come to Homeboy and we provide job, we provide, some basic things for them. And that is important because if you have a criminal record, if you have
they don't have a shot. They can't go out and get a job. They need somebody to take a break on them.
And they come and then we give them the employment and the the training, or we call it the healing that comes with that. So they go through all kinds of tattoo removal, counseling, parenting, anger management, all of those things, wraparound services. But most important is that they come to a place for the first time in life where somebody actually loved them. And there is that community of it is a kindred spirit and compassion. And Father Greg absolutely loved every soul that comes in that door, and they know it. And he's spreading that to all the other, homies that now become part of the management team, and we're spreading that, that way of transforming people's lives, because they are just damaged souls.
Sure.
That needs to be restored.
Does it scale? Do you think you could move it to other markets? Do you think that you could replicate the same type of success and set up business units in other areas and start the distribution channel there?
So that has been asked many, many times, and the answer is yes, it could, but we're not. What we have is called Global Homeboy Network. So every year in August, organizations from around the country and around the world come and learn about Homeboy and share best practices. And I think that's the way to do it, because it is all about, we know Los Angeles, we know this community, and it is all about this really, really sincere, trusting environment. And that's not something you can just scale,
right.
no.
Yeah.
But what you
Everybody
can
has
say,
their differences and their regional differences.
and people have to. I was just listening to Father Greg on, I think he was on the Channel 5, and Frank Buckley was interviewing him, and he was talking about, they were talking about police and what do we do about the gangs. There's still 110,000, I think, gang members active in Los Angeles, and I don't know how many different gangs still. So we've come a long way, but there's still and he was asking Father Greg if, is this the police that's going to fix it, and why don't they fix it? And Father Greg very rightly said, this is about, broken communities, and broken communities cannot be fixed by the police. Broken communities have to be,
from within,
dealt with and developed and healed from within. And so that's the concept. And I think that's what Father Greg does. He is everywhere spreading that message that, and I love the fact that, we provide, we have the businesses. So
they see brands in the markets, right? The chips, and I see products in restaurants, and things are popping up. It looks like a great business model with a very recognizable brand,
Absolutely.
with a very socially conscious outcome, right? And so it just sounds logical that you would be able to, at least at the surface. So I had to ask the question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a challenging model, but it is a model that I think is the right in today's world. No, you're not trying to, fix people. It's about really having, and I've learned compassion in a completely different way. No, it's not about fixing people. It's about being there, understanding where they are, and appreciate, and just
to where they are, right?
Where they meet them where they are.
Where you
are, right? And then provide what is needed for them to heal, and heal on their terms, and not what I think they need to do. Who the heck am I to,
right.
And I think that is something that's so, I use that all the time, not just at Homeboy, but anywhere, is compassion is very, very different than I sort of had the idea of it being. So, and I think he has a great saying that's like, an educated homie might or might not go back, and an employed might or might not go back, but a healed gang member will never go back. And he just knows that 100%.
Right.
So if you're healed, and no one with hope will ever join a gang. And so when people say, I'm joining into a gang, they are actually running from something.
Sure.
And it's a lethal lack of hope. And I think when you understand that, then, the work becomes so much different. And it's amazing.
and I could see the passion in you as you talk about it for these nonprofits. And back to the networking. In our world of networking, in my personal world that I'm in, we do a lot of work with various nonprofits, and so I think most companies most corporations are very attuned to making sure that there's a purpose and that they're giving back. Team building exercises are done, and most of the sales companies I know, they are done around giving back and being at a nonprofit and doing things like cooking dinners at the Ronald McDonald House, doing things like that. So what a great time to be in that, and what a great use of your passion and your enthusiasm for life here. I want to close here and make sure that you know that I'm going to put the web address for A Good Life Designed for everyone here to see and know where they can go get the book. Design Your Life is out everywhere. And Pernille, thank you so much for the time here today, and so excited to see what things are going on. And I have a feeling this may not be the last time that we cross paths here. Oh, great. Thank you so much. It was really a great fun. So thank you for making it so interactive and really a joyful time. So thank you, and hope that people will start designing their best life and take our, not advice, but our inspiration for it. So thank you. Thank you. Goodbye. Hey, Mike here. Hope you liked this boardroom session. Please check back to your future sessions as we're recording a new one every month. If you want to reach out, look for me on LinkedIn or send me a note at mike@sidepath.com. That's Mike at sidepath.com.